to order. If everyone could stand and for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, there are no agenda adjustments. We'll go down to number 2, the consideration of minutes to approve the minutes of March 13th, 2024 Board of Directors meeting and the March 20th, 2024 special budget meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? We'll move down to 3, public comment. At this time, I welcome anyone here in the public to come up to the microphone, introduce yourself, tell us what town you're from. Please remember to refrain from using student names or teacher names. No? Okay. Fast these first few ones, I guess. No petitions or communications. Number 5, down to reports. 5.1, the superintendent's report.
So I'm going to waive my whole report because I've been working a lot on budget. And then you see the appointments, the resignations, and the retirements. And so we can move forward.
We will move down to 6.1. Budget discussions to continue. We're moving into the revenue and essentials program services.
All right, so I'm not sure where you want me to start exactly, okay? So the plan was to go over adult education, food nutrition. I can jump down to the funding formula and some highlights from that. I can go into tax impact. I can go into like big picture items. And then if you want me to go back to food service and adult ed, I can do that. So what would you like me to start from the bottom up?
I would think just go to this because it should be really quick and brief. These don't take up much discussion, I don't believe.
Okay. How many people just want me to keep moving from the top? Okay, I'm seeing thumbs. Good, thank you. All right, so here we go. So I just said what we're going to be covering tonight, and yes, you've got to follow. Thank you. So school nutrition, this covers what our staffing is. So you can see where the food managers are, our assistant food managers, food service workers, and total. Now remember, these two are not part of the general fund. These are funds outside the general fund that do require additional local dollars for. So that's why we review them, is they sit outside the general fund, but they're an article that folks do vote on at the public meeting to move forward, which is the adult ed needed taxes and the food nutrition. So I just want to make sure people understand this is not about the general fund. This is outside the general fund, okay? Then we kind of just wanted to give you a snapshot of how much we serve for breakfasts and lunches, how many meals each month, so you have a breakdown of that. You can see we do well. I was at Sabatis Primary today for lunch, and they were very excited about their pizza and ham sandwiches and all the fruits and vegetables. So our food service staff does a great job putting out meals. I remember being at the high school one day, and the smells, I was like, wow, okay, I'm hungry. And they're like, that's our point. We want them to be smelling it across the school so they'll come eat. So anything to entice them to come have a meal with us. The budget highlights from this was the Director of Operations salary for food service responsibilities. You will see a line for that. And then, of course, the increases with salary and health benefits. These staff members are part of the CBA supports services. Then you can see the breakdown of what the local contribution. The good news we have is last year we asked for $150,000 for local, and this year we need $54,095, and that's because of the great work that food service is doing, and Kathy Martin leading the charge with getting more revenue coming through. learning from other districts, what do you do to beef revenue up, which is the a la carte, a lot of the a la carte items, and offering some different choices for students. That does cost money, using vending machines to offset like different drinks and so forth. So looking at ways to bring in money so that we're not having to ask. So you can see that's dropped considerably this year. So you can see the breakdown and the difference.
Katie,
Yes?
will lunches and breakfasts be free for students again next year?
Yes. We haven't heard differently at that. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions about food service? Okay. The next one is adult education, and as you know, we have a .75 adult ed director, and Jim Palmer is here if there are questions. So we went over, he's added his numbers from last year's slides. So this year with the graduation rates, so remember they do a graduation in June for adult ed, so he's anticipating 9 students graduating. The enrollment, so the high set, the high school diploma, the dual status, you can see those numbers. And so there's been an increase there for from 25 students to 28 students. And then CASAS testing is the, went from 27 to 30. So these are all the different ways students can get a high school diploma, or they can get, Jim, you might have to help me with this, but acknowledgement that they have their credentials. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Their credentials for workforce. So you can see those numbers. But if you have specific questions about those, he can come up. Then you can see the adult education enrollment, so things that have been offered and what our participation rate is for each of those. And then the totals, so there's been an increase in enrichment enrollment. So you can see students are participating, community members are participating. I know Jim's been asking for different feedback on what the community is looking for. He's offered babysitting, and I think that was successful. Students wanted to get their babysitting certificate, but he can highlight other things if you would like to hear more about that. Then you can see the different sources of revenue for adult ed. One is the additional local, then there's state subsidy that also comes in, then what we anticipate for revenue from course fees, then there's the AFLA grant that also subsidizes the program with different course offerings, and then the total. So you can see there's an increase of $3,445. But you can see we're asking for this year, and I've got a skim up there, from the communities additional, so you can see that's broken down by each community. So it's down for local taxes asked for. There's an increase in state subsidy. We're down in what we anticipated for course revenue, and that was really where we were putting the right money of the AFLA grant and the course fees. So we just made a correction there that the course fees bring in about $2,000 and the AFLA grant's bringing in $6,000. So you can see that differential. So there'll still be an additional ask, and you'll see that in the slide around taxes. So there's an increase to adult ed of $3,400.
Can you talk to us a little bit, my mic's being weird. With the fiscal year 23, there was 102,000 anticipated, but 23 actual.
Yes, do you want to talk about that?
Talk a little bit about what that was about?
Yeah, she'll explain it.
Thanks.
That was an error that was anticipated. So the state subsidy, there's a particular formula that is used by the state that calculates what we get an estimate a couple months back. So usually in January we get the estimate for the next year, and the formula is based on what we're spending our money on, how much local we're contributing, and some other factors that Jim and I have talked about. I'd like to understand that formula a little bit better just so we kind of know where we're going, but you'll see it did go up a little bit this year because we were contributing more locally, and we have higher expense for a director that was full-time last year in 0.75 as compared to a half-time director. So that was an error. What we received for the state subsidy is what probably should have been put in as anticipated revenue for that budget year.
Just remind me, this fiscal year 24 is 75%? Or
Correct.
the year of 23 was 100%?
Correct.
And then 50% for 22?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions about adult education? So the overview, you can see that where we were. I want to see the different slide. Okay, so I'm going to jump to slide number 16. We did receive the ban for health insurance. And so yesterday, we were informed that the band is higher than we had predicted. So we put in 10%, and the band is, the highest is 11.5%. And so in order to make sure we have room for people who may change which health plan they're going to go with, we are going to be upping it to 12%. So that's a 2% increase from what we budgeted, which is $60,000. So what we did at the bottom, because obviously from yesterday to today, we did not have time to change the entire budget to outline what that would look like, because it would hit every single cost center. So we did at the bottom line, so you can see the difference, is that we added the 60,000 to the total, then we added to the difference, and then we added to the percent. So that shifted us to a 9.14% increase. So yeah, we did not have good news about the band. And we had been told right from the beginning we'd be at the top of the band, and we anticipated it'd be at 10. And so as you read here, it's been below 10 since 2013, and they've raised it this year. And they've even offset it, so it would have been even higher, but the trust was working on how to bring that as low as they could, knowing it would be an impact on districts. So I wanted to make sure you had the most update, because I know as you talk about where you want to be in the budget, I wanted to make sure you at least had the total, even though by cost center, you can imagine it impacts each cost center, depending on the number of staff. So moving into the ED 279, as you know, that's the state funding. And you can find it online. It's a formula. It's a complicated formula. So you can dive deep into it. What I'm doing is just highlighting what I noted from last year to this year. So one of the big one is our attending pupil average was down 33.5 students. So it was calculated at 1,272 students, 0.5. We had an increase to the per pupil rate. So when they calculate your staff costs, substitutes, anything having to do with calculating the per pupil cost, there was an increase in that. We had a $33,000 reduction because of our disadvantage allocation, which we knew was probably coming because we had less students qualifying for disadvantage. So that's going to be a reduction. And we had less students. So you're going to see that. What we had a huge increase in is $708,000 in special education allocation. That was the most significant increase in the ED 279 was the special education allocation. Another big thing was there was an increase in the 3-year average valuation for each town. So even though the mill rate went down, so last year they took the valuation of each town and multiplied it by 6.97 to get the town's allocation. They reduced it to 6.62 mill rate, but because our evaluation were up, we didn't see really an offset. Okay, it still required a higher amount. So what came down, and I want to remind folks of how it's determined, right? So they take the percentage of total pupils is determined for each town. So that's the first thing they do, is they say, here's the number of students, what percentage of those number of students is in each town. So you can see enrollment, Litchfield is 33.9%, Sabattis is 48.27%, and Wales is 17.83%. So they do that first. Okay? Then what they do is they add Sabattis has additional debt. So that is tagged to Sabattis. It does not get filtered into all three towns. It only goes to Sabattis. So when they take the calculation, they add that to it. Okay? So they calculate the total allocation for the municipality, and they divide it by the percent of the enrollment, and they add Sabattis's debt. And that's what they do first. So now they, on the EDU79, it says the total for each town. Then they do what the towns can afford first. So it's not that they determine what the state will pay first and then the town. They do the town first. And so how they get to that is they take the 3-year average valuation multiplied by the mill rate, determines the amount each town needs to contribute, the local contribution, to receive the state funds. Then they take that, so what the local contribution will be, and they subtract that from the total allocation, which then determines the state allocation. So you can see the local contribution is based on how much each town, as the state can afford, even though we all know, that's just what they say. Doesn't mean each personal household doesn't have struggles and challenges. But they determine that, so you can see that Litchfield's at 45%, Sabattis at 40%, and Wales at 15%. Then the state contribution, Litchfield gets 26% of the state contribution, Sabattis gets 55%, and Wales gets 19%. So we're often asked, okay, that would not change whether we were on, each town was on its own or not. That amount is set. It's the evaluation times the mill rate. Then it's, the totals would be different for what the total beginning is. Okay? So I just want to be clear on that. So then I put for the ED 279, what was the FY total allocation for each town? So you can see each town's allocation went up, but the local contribution went up as well. So you can see, if I take Litchfield was up $311,000 for the, so when we had the total cost of what it is to educate at RSU4 based on this formula, Litchfield has $311,000 more allocated to it. Its local contribution was up $91,713, and its state allocation was up $219,000. If you look at Sabattis had an increase of $126,000. Their local contribution went up $151,000. And then they had a reduction in state funding of $24,768. Wales had $176,000 more allocated. They had $26,000 difference in what they need to raise, and they gained $150,000 from state funds. So there was a shift this year based on evaluation, because that's what they take the evaluation of each town as they come in, as the 3-year average shifts. So that's going to shift what each town may have to raise. So then you can see that for FY25, we had a difference of state contribution of $344,000. We have a difference of local at $269,384, and we had a total increase of $614,172. So last year, remember, local ended up having to pay more to get less. This year, you're almost paying half and half, right? You're paying it close to 50% or so to get more. But it's still, you're still not paying less to get more state funds. Still that imbalance hasn't. Then we have the cost sharing formula and the student count. So the additional local, the school nutrition is here, and the adult education is here, and then it's determined using this formula. So remember, because I get this question a lot from Litchfield about we pay more in taxes, right? So in the ED 279, their allocation is larger, not because of the 50-50. The 50-50 is played out on this slide. It's two different things, totally two different things. The ED 279, it's enrollment to get the percent that they receive from the state allocation, total budget, but it's the evaluation that determines how much they're going to pay of that and how much state is going to make a difference, right? This one, it's 50% evaluation, 50% enrollment. So you can see here, Litchfield state evaluation determines 45.30%. So they're 50% of the 50-50. And you probably do a better job explaining it, Samantha, but, so jump in. Sabatis pays 40%, 40.19%, and Wales pays 14.5% of the 50-50 side, the 50% side for evaluation, right? And then the student count, Litchfield is 428, Sabatis is 602, and Wales is 218. So then again, the percentages are done. So Litchfield is 34.29%, Sabatis is 48.24%, and then Wales is 17.47. Then we put those two together on how much each town pays of the local additional. This is in addition to what you need to raise for the state funding. So you can see here Litchfield does 39.80%, Sabatis does 44.21%, and Wales does 14.99%. 15.99%, thank you. So you can see here in the 50-50 model, Sabatis has the higher contribution. So then you can see the additional local, so that's not what we talked about with the ED 279. So we have to raise $1.3 million more locally, in addition to what needs to be raised for the state. And then there it is all put together, our revenue. So now we're talking about all of the revenue put together. Bob?
Go back to one slide. So
Go back
you're
at
showing
that.
the 1.3 is the difference from prior year.
Correct.
So you would, it's the 5.152.
Yes.
Proposed.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, so
Yes.
we'd apply those percentages to 5.1,
Yes.
not the 1.3.
Correct.
And just a reminder too, the only slide that we adjusted based on the updated Anthem information that we've gotten in the last 2 days was the slide that had the little text bubble on it. So all of these figures will need to be updated as well. Okay? Just don't want us to lose sight of that.
Then you see everything together. So we've already talked about that, and as Samantha said, back in that other slide, you know this is higher, okay, because we're going to make adjustments to make it balance. Then you see the school nutrition, again highlighted on what it goes into that for revenue. The adult ed, what goes in for revenue. And then here's the total, and it has not been updated since we added the 60,000. But you get the general gist of where we are in the mill rates, based on the 1 mill raised. So in this box here, common, we took a common, so it was apples to apples, which is from the main revenue report that publishes what the revenue, what the evaluation is for the town. So, and all the town managers agreed that this would be the number we would use, so that it's consistent. It's what, if anybody Googled, what's our town worth, you would get that number. And so that's what's based on how much increase in taxes would be for each home. Value, 100,000, 150,000, 200,000. Sure. Sure.
My technical background. But at the beginning
Can you
slides
talk into the mic,
went with
Doug?
Yeah, go in the,
Sorry, guys.
in the mic.
The beginning slides went with fiscal year 24 first, and then fiscal year 25. And then the later slides went with fiscal year 25
they did
first
the
and
reverse.
fiscal year 24 next.
Mhm.
Continuity I would appreciate it going forward. I know it's a big deal, but it's a little
Right, they
deal, you know
changed
what I
after
mean?
that slide here.
Yeah.
Yes, I
It-
see what you're saying.
It kind of screws me
Yeah.
up when I do like an at-a-glance, flipping back and forth. It kind of messes me up. I
That-
use a proper term.
No, we can fix it, because we have to fix up other things too.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
we do that, yeah.
I appreciate it.
Do you want me to come? Okay, Nicole?
I just had a question on the total number of students value. Is that including superintendent's agreements? So students that come to our district?
Yes.
So that's not, that's part
Yeah,
of
and
it?
then we do put in for, yeah, it does. I
Let me-
should
let
check.
me double
Yeah,
check
let's
on that
double
to
check.
be
I want to
sure.
say, because I know we ask for, we have to put in every year, which we do, asking for our subsidy for our superintendent's agreements. So let me double check with NJ probably at some point, if that total. So we'll verify that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Bob?
Yeah, you don't have it on here, but I think it's important for people to be able to see how much the state is paying. So we have our required local, and we ought to have the state share, because then they can see how much the state, so Litchfield can see they're gonna have to pay 2.8 million. How much are they gonna get from the state for that 2.8 million? So in that slide, kind of like what we used to
Yeah.
publish in the book, we used to have across the
Yes.
top, it was the state amount, the required local, and then the local additional.
Yes.
That way, it's kind of like putting the amount of benefits on a check stub so people can see what they're really making.
Yes. So take what we put on this slide into that other slide. Yeah. Okay. Yes, yeah. So this, we'll put this information in that other
Broken down by
part.
town is what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
Right,
broken
so,
down
I
by
mean-
town.
Yeah.
Yes,
Probably the top one is the state allocation and then the local required.
Yep.
correct.
I think actually we did do that last year.
Yeah, we did have that
Yeah.
last year, so I'm not sure. Yeah, we missed it, but we'll put it in.
We did it after you suggested it last year.
Right.
And I wonder, I think there's confusion around the difference between local required, local additional, because they are two funding formulas that are different. And
Correct.
you just explained it, but still, I wonder if there's a way to make it more simpler for people to understand, because that's where a lot of the confusion and questions come up. Is like, well, I thought we had this formula that the board agreed on that was 50% enrollment, 50% valuation, which is true, but that's not the formula for the local required. So
Correct.
helping people to understand that a little more clear, I think could help alleviate some of the misconceptions that different towns pay more.
Yeah, we can do like a little sheet on, like, this is
I almost see like a
local
little flow
required,
chart. Yeah.
and then, yes.
Yes,
Kind
something.
of taking some of what we did here and condense it and put
Yeah.
it, yes. Okay.
And like even reading this, like local additional school nutrition and adult education. When I read that, I'm like, oh, so a local additional funds school nutrition and adult education? No. So how
Yeah.
can we make that more clearer for the public that just picks this up and tries to make sense of it?
Okay.
Would be helpful.
No, that's great feedback.
Thanks.
Yes.
Any other questions?
In the cost-sharing formula for student count, are kids who are placed out of district, are they in that student count?
They are, if they're our student, and we, yes, they're in our count. What wouldn't be in our count is a superintendent's agreement in another town, because they would be counting them.
It would be interesting to see how many kids we take from other districts and how many kids in this district go to another district. That would be interesting to see as well.
Yes, I think we have that number, yes.
Yeah, that was published when we got our student count.
Yes, it's in your
Showed the
student count numbers.
By grades.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in your student enrollment page.
Thank you.
All right, so now you have your number. Now is the time for discussion. Now is the time that we all have to decide. These are the recommendations coming from the superintendent and administrators, and what we would like to see. So we had very robust discussion last week about Cost Center 1, and I don't feel like we finished it because there's still some questions up in the air of what you guys want and do not want. So at this time, you need to direct Katie and the admin where you want them to go with what their recommendations are. So for Cost Center 1, their recommendation is to remove the science teacher, sorry,
That's all right.
and the fourth grade teacher. And that was the discussion we were having last time.
Just to clear, I did get that the superintendent's agreements are included in the count.
Doug?
I'll start it. I don't mind. I'll just throw that out there. Personally, I still would like to have those positions put back in personally. But is there any way, I mean, this is a in-depth thought for you, but is there any way that the budget could maintain the percentage that it's at with including those two or trying to keep classrooms, the bigger picture is trying to keep classrooms to a 16 student kind of cap-ish? Because you also mentioned that we can't specifically identify the science teacher if the need has adjusted based on whatever. So I think the more important feedback that I'm getting from people is having the class sizes and the programs not be impacted seems to be a thing. And is there any way to not make this break 10% overall and have that need or desire from the population be met, I guess?
So I think you would be asking me to come back with a $216,000 reduction.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I mean, if you want it to be neutral, you'd have to say, add the two teachers and then come back with a $216,000 reduction.
Yes, I guess, and I know it's not easy. I guess if that's something that could at least be illustrated, I think that would be good to at least show the public what that would entail, and that we at least are entertaining a discussion on having those positions put back in and what the repercussions will be to the rest of the budget. If that, I know it's a lot of work.
Do you have any helpful suggestions to them of where to go?
I felt like last time I started going in that realm, I think, honestly, with that, I think that it's best left to the professionals on the inside, and I would rather them approach
I'm just
with that.
making sure that
is
that's what you
yeah,
like.
no, I think for me, the bigger picture is just having those two positions somehow put back in without drastically, bringing this budget crazy, I guess. Is it?
Diane?
I'm trying to think.
I'm going to call on all of you, so be prepared. Just saying.
Thank you.
So,
Katie? It's not been very much there to use. So how useful is that?
Yeah, so as I shared back, so everybody can have it, is I did check in, and they are here, the principals speak to it as well, but I did check in with Dustin Miles yesterday, and he said they do use it often. Teachers will send out an email, I'm headed over to Share Center, what do you need? When I talked to the middle school, they had it in their budget last year, and with the reductions, they took it out, and teachers were disappointed. I did leave a message with Share Center yesterday that I was looking for some type of usage report. I was hoping they would say, here's a report from RSU4, this is how much teachers use it, and so forth. So I know I'd put Jan on the spot, but, they certainly can speak to it. I think some use it a lot and some don't use it as much. But I know the first thing out when people call and say, we're looking for an office chair or desk, I'll say, have we called Share Center? That's the first thing out is like, can we go to Share Center and see what they have first for furniture items? So.
can you explain to the general public what Share Center is?
Yeah. So Share Center is a great place for where businesses or folks that have an abundance of things that they can't move or they're no longer using, and they bring it to the Share Center. Our teachers, staff, because we have membership, can go and get things. They have pencils and papers and different poster board. So like an art teacher could go and say, I'm going to be doing a project. I'm going to go to Share Center and pick up some different things that might fall into the project, or a teacher might find folders or binders, like the binders. You can, different things like that. And so it's a savings to us when they're accessing that.
Katie, is it a district membership or a school by school?
Yeah, we asked about a district membership, so Samantha can speak to that.
They have the option for a district membership, but it doesn't come with savings to us. So what they have for membership options for individual schools is if your school qualifies for a small school, you pay a minimum, which this year will be $600. And then if you do not qualify, like your student count and your staff count is higher than that threshold, then you pay a per student and per staff member cost that comes into a total. So not all of our schools have Share Center. The high school doesn't have a membership. The middle school wouldn't qualify for the small school. They would pay a much higher amount. They would pay closer to $1,500. And last year, the Share Center did increase their rates pretty substantially, and they probably will do so again, just like everywhere else, inflation and, prices going up. But it's similar, if you're familiar with Ruth's Reusables, that's another very similar organization that takes gently used or, excess office materials and equipment.
Thank you. So, Diane, that answered your question, but now I'm going to go back about what your cost center one thoughts are.
Well, I would agree with putting the teachers back in, just like you said. As long as we could get the costs out somewhere so that we can maintain it.
You know it's coming.
I do.
Be ready, Brandon.
I'm ready. So I also agree with putting teacher positions back in with this caveat. And I think this is something that as a board, I wish that we would have talked about before budget season. And this is the idea of maximum class size, minimum class size, because I think it could really help to put some sort of concrete number and understanding of where's the greatest need, greatest impact, and I would trust our admin team to do that. So if we were cutting a position in fourth grade and it was going to make class sizes 22 per student, per class, and we as a board said, our sweet spot is really 16 to 18, then Katie and those on the admin team could say, okay, like this is where it needs to go. So I would like to see us do that. I don't know if we can do that for this budget year or if it's something that we need to wait to do for a budget year moving forward. I do have concerns about the substitute teacher lines, hearing from teachers and other people around, particularly for our ed techs, being pulled out of their assignment to have to cover classrooms. So that's something that I think is an investment that I would like to see in this cost center. And maybe it's not bringing 2 full teachers on, replacing those 2 teachers. Maybe it's putting some more money in the substitute line and a classroom teacher. Looking at the bottom line, a 9.14% is not something that I can support because I know it's not going to pass. So I think we're going to have to make some really difficult decisions here before it goes to the public. So for cost center 1, I would love to have a conversation around maximum and minimum classes. Again, I think the substitute lines we need to look at. And then in terms of cuts, like Doug said, I want to rely on the professionals that are doing this day to day. They know what is needed. I would encourage just to double check supplies. But again, I'm not in the weeds. Thank you.
Brandon.
So I don't have a good idea of where to cut any of this stuff from, but personally, I would like to see the teaching positions put back in as a show to the staff that we currently have, that we're trying to support them. And the cost is the cost. I mean, I think it's an unrealistic expectation to have a 1% increase in 1 year and then have the health costs that we have to take in and all of the other things that have gone up equally. To expect a 0 or a 1 again, I think is unrealistic. But I realize that adding 2 teachers' positions would already put you at a 1% increase with the cost we talked about last time. So I don't know how that shakes out, and something's got to give. But if it is an ability that we have to add that back in, to sell that as saying this is what we would need for support, I think that's what we should do.
Thank you, Brandon. Scott? No comment.
I'm going to be nice and polite.
Bob?
Yes. So I think, first of all, limit to cost center 1 is, we're looking at 9.1. There's 9.1 spread across all the cost centers. Look at just cost center 1 is really not, because outside of salary and benefits, there's only $291,000 for all other items in cost center 1. And if you want to add $216,000 for the teachers, you got to take it out of cost center 1. That leaves you $70,000 to support the schools. So looking at just the cost center, I truly believe that we have a number, we have a bottom line, and we have a percentage. I think the real question to be asked is what percentage of an increase will you support? And if it's, and then that's it. And if putting the teachers back in, if that's part of it, we'd like the teachers back in, but we want to see an increase of this. I don't have the without salaries and benefits total for the total cost centers, but I would imagine that cost center 1 is like our big one, and we got under 300,000. If we're trying to get this budget down, 500,000, $1 million, whatever it is, to get it down to whatever number people believe is acceptable to the community, and then let them, if they want to pump more into it at the budget meeting, and then ratify it, that's their prerogative. But I think that's that should be the real meat of the discussion. Like, what can we support? What dollar amount can we support? Or percent of increase, with or without the teachers? I mean, if we say we can only support a 5% increase, and we want those 2 teachers, administration, come back and give us a budget proposal with a 5% increase, those 2 teachers at us, and give us a list of what you're taking out with an idea of how that's going to impact, which would probably negatively impact, the students and staff and the education, which is the most important piece. the education of the students. So I think that's the real discussion, because cost center one, you know, we don't have enough that's not in salary and benefits to go and support the two teachers. So eliminating cost center one is kind of a false hope. So I
Yeah.
would say that, as we've had to do in the past many times, we get a number proposed, we look at it and say, we can't support that much. The board comes up with a number that they think can support, we send it back to the professionals to look at their budget and go through it, and then come back with that number, and then also a list of everything that they took out. I mean, not $5 here and $5 there, but especially the big pieces, because we're talking big numbers here, I think. And unfortunately, when you talk big numbers in this budget, it's staff. 'Cause that's, 80% of the budget? Salary and benefits? So, you know,
So I want to do that for them, but I also, it was almost a consensus to about the teachers. So I want, if the consensus is to add these teachers back in, I want to be able to give them that direction so that they don't go back and we say, okay, we want a 5%, then they come back with the teachers not in, and then then everybody's, well, no, we want them back in. So I'm trying to give them that sense of, yes, we want the teachers in, no, we don't want the teachers in.
right. So from my point, I think I would not put the teachers back in. I'm looking solely at cost benefit. I just don't think we can afford it. I think we probably have enough staff. Maybe some of the programs aren't offered as we would like, but I think we are providing the quality education last year without those two staff members being present, and I think we would continue to do that. So those are my thoughts on those two teaching positions.
Thank you, Bob. Nicole?
So my position hasn't changed. I feel that those teaching positions need to be considered for inclusion in this year's budget, along with appropriate cuts necessary to offset those. So they were in last year's, keep them in, and then go and see what you need to add. And I don't know that it's just cost center one. I don't think that that's fair
And
to say.
I'm not asking us to just cut, I'm asking about the teachers. So the drivers
Yeah.
that they had said, like, they wanted, the teachers were being pulled out, and you all don't want them pulled out. So that's what I'm asking. Then there
Right,
was
because if you ask, can I
Yeah.
clarify for my own thinking? So if you say, we want you to be at 5%, and what we don't want on the list is those two teaching
That's
positions,
what I'm asking.
then I will make the list without the two teaching positions, so I'm
That's what
just,
I'm
I'm saying back
Yep.
what you're saying. So that's, I think, what the clarification, I know, Christy, you were one or two, so,
So that's.
That's by
Yep.
adding the
That's
teachers.
what
you
I
were
was,
di-
that's
right.
only where I was going with that. I wasn't trying to say, okay, you have to
Right.
make that cut in cost center one. No. I just,
Yeah.
that was their driver, was adding or removing the two teachers in. So consensus now says they want them back in, yes. Well, I got majority.
Mob rule.
Sorry, got majority. Then the next driver was change to the transportation. We never really talked about that cost center. We just kind of skipped
it's not,
over
it's
that.
not a major driver. Do you mean
There was a-
adding the bus driver?
There was a change
Yes.
in the title, and we
Correct.
didn't really ever give you
A chance to explain it?
a consensus or
Okay.
a yes or a no. That's the
Sure.
change that they'd like to have.
Yeah, I'm coming back to it. I'm going to the slides. I'll indicate
Alright.
which slide.
Sorry.
That's all right. No, I've got. So we need transportation, which will be start at
And there was an-
slide 5.
there was an-
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember what the.
yes. No, what the drivers were. Yeah, I do know what you're saying. So the reason my comment is it's not a driver is the change is a $12,000 change. Okay? So I'll explain it and go through it. So and then, as Jill said, the other was the change in moving the assistant superintendent position into cost center 5. That was a big change there. So for transportation, this was covers the, what we proposing, which came up during Hot Topics, so it was discussed at our first meeting, is having a director of transportation replace the trip coordinator position and will be a year-round position. We have 12 bus drivers, and asking that one driver will be considered a head bus driver. Then we have our part-time courier driver, and then we have the trips and substitutes line. So what this is we have 10 routes, and then we'll have 2 drivers that are available as needed to do whatever, like trips or pick up when people are absent or do other things so that we're not scrambling when someone's out. We have people on staff. And that shift, so I'm going to go to the, sorry, I am skipping around. So the big impact here was special education transportation. This was a major driver in this cost center, which was we have special education has a grant called local entitlement that was covering a lot of the special education transportation. Is that correct, Nancy? Yes, I'm getting on. And so that grant cannot sustain that because they were using carryover for that. And so we don't have that same level of carryover. So that came into this, had to come in because grant funds were coming down. So that's a huge driver. Then we created the director of transportation, really reallocating the trip coordinator position funds. And we added a bus driver position. So this is where we added the bus driver position. So we would have 10 runs, 12 drivers. And then the increase to salaries and health benefit, the new Family Leave Act law. And so then what we showed was we know we do not have a director, a food service director. So really it's a shift around that the trip coordinator position becomes the director of transportation and the director of operations picks up the food service. So it's still a savings to the district and not having to hire a food service director. So you can see the difference in costs here for the position changes.
Katie, is the director of transportation a year-round position?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see that now.
Yes.
I asked you, sorry.
That's okay.
Right there.
It's okay.
Oh, sorry, I was still reading the slide. I don't know who was first.
I don't either.
Sorry.
Nicole?
Nicole, go.
All right, thanks, Scott. I have a question about the role of Director of Transportation. I actually have 2 questions. The first is, what are the differences in roles and responsibilities between the Director of Transportation and the trip coordinator?
All right. So, Jonathan, do you want to talk about that? Getting his mic.
And sorry, just to clarify, I'm meaning in the new
Yes, he's gonna
proposed
explain what-
outlook,
yeah.
not what he's doing today.
No, he's going to speak to why this has come about from his experience. Okay.
So let me just make sure I'm understanding your question correctly. If this transportation change were to happen, what would the 2 roles and how do they differ, I guess is what you were asking?
Right, what would this trip coordinator role be doing differently as a Director of Transportation in the next year's budget?
So they would be doing everything that they're currently doing, and then they'd be taking on, primarily an additional duty to what they're currently doing now is personnel management, payroll, hiring, firing, budget, and state federal compliance. So a lot of things that I do on a regular basis are not so much the day-to-day routing as it is hiring and staff personnel issues that come about. Decisions that come up in regards to moving students around to certain buses and routes. Let's see, what else would they do? That in a nutshell kind of covers it. There's a lot of more day-to-day stuff that I could speak on, but in general, again, it's state federal compliance, it's personnel, and it's payroll.
And they'd also oversee the maintenance of the buses and the invoicing.
Correct.
I'm not sure I've digested all of that yet. So for now, I'll just stick with my original second question that I had, which was, in this new Director of Transportation position, being year-round, what would be done during the summer that makes it a year-round position?
Yeah, so I can answer that, experiencing it last summer. So a lot of it is running our summer transportation, which we do have, and getting ready for the new year, getting the students, the buses routes out earlier. Like this year, we were crunching last minute of what we were going to do with runs, and so it's giving that person plenty of time to get everything uploaded, ready for the website and so forth for parents. So that time, that's what allows them year-round.
Thank you.
To piggyback off that, how did you determine the $22,000 increase to that? Is that just, where did that number come from for the salary?
So we looked at what comp stuff was around for Director of Transportation, and we looked at what the person's currently, the trip coordinator position, then going year-round, because it's not a year-round position right now. So we're calculating a year-round position.
And it's based
Make it
off
sound.
of other similar positions
Yes.
within.
Mhm.
Sorry, just to get a clarifying point on the question that Scott just made. So we looked around at municipalities nearby on what their salaries are for a Director of Transportation, but did we contact them to ask them about their roles or responsibilities or a job description? Because I don't know that it's apples to apples if we didn't. If we're just going on face value of what's in their budget or their line item, I don't think it's I know
Do
for
you
a
want-
fact it's not apples to apples for Lisbon, so.
Can you hear me? There we go. Sorry. Yeah, certainly some districts share, similar to the role that I currently fit, Lisbon being one of them, they share responsibilities within the job title. He's not a Director of Transportation, he's a Director of Operations, similar to myself, so he oversees some similar things. But then other school districts specifically have facility directors or transportation directors. I'm in a group called MAPT, which is Maine Association of People Transport, so I talk to directors all the time, both that have multiple responsibilities and then ones that are just specifically transportation directors. So we bounce questions, ideas, topics around all the time. So again, to your point, maybe not comparable apples to apples with, we're not sharing job duty descriptions, but we share a lot of the same responsibilities in the questions and the forums that we, talk about and look to seek answers from the DOE or other directors. So we really looked at what the trip coordinator was going, then the year-round is what we looked at as well. The challenge here is if you don't do the change, is we will need to add a director, a food service director.
Did we even ask the person in the current role what they would need to take on the new responsibilities rather than just give them?
We haven't made a decision of whether that person who's in the current role would be the Director of Transportation. We haven't done that.
No, I understand.
Okay.
I'm just, I don't know. If there was an opportunity to save $10,000, anyway, other questions?
This would be a salaried position rather, yeah.
It doesn't say.
Oh, do you want a new mic? We've got extras, lots of extras. So Scott, this is a salaried position where currently the trip coordinator is an hourly position.
Yep,
There-
if somebody approached me, if we gave you a $10,000 raise and you had to take on these X responsibilities, would you be willing to do that? Just an idea.
Gotta find the person.
I thought it was a natural transition here.
We have not made that decision yet.
No, I understand.
Oh, okay.
I'd be surprised if that person doesn't land in that position. They may. We'll see. What line item is the courier on? I didn't see this.
Oh,
Part-time
the courier.
Yeah.
Yeah, John, that's in the sub line, is that
Sub
correct?
sub driver
Yeah,
line.
in the
lives
sub
within it.
driver line.
So are we paying for that, or is it just a substitute driver? Is that in addition to?
Yeah, we are paying, but it's not like position-based. It's a person who is working part-time, if you will. and we pay them as a substitute because it's not guaranteed work. They're not like guaranteed full-time gainful employment as an employee in the district.
Yep.
So we reduced it last year after, I can't remember which budget meeting, but it came up and then it went down from 5 days a week, the interoffice mail, to 3 days a week. It's been a struggle maintaining, the needs of the forms and timesheets that come into the office, et cetera. But we've been doing it so far.
When we first started into this cost center, Katie was mentioning additional drivers that would be finding things to do. That's not something they can do? Is that the courier portion?
We can look into that. Yeah, I mean, the trouble is that if primarily, I think stop me if I'm wrong, the intent of those extra drivers is to make sure that we're not having runs that aren't covered throughout the week, and we're not having the robocalls about bus runs that are down and, parents needing to transport. So if you give someone a routine position that they're doing, during the daytime, that's taking away from their availability for that, it kind of takes away from that.
I'm just trying to
opportunity
think
Yeah,
outside the
I
box.
hear ya.
I know
Yeah.
this stuff is, $1,000 here, $2,000
Oh, yeah.
here, but really at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I just don't think you're being aggressive enough in eliminating some of this,
Mm-hmm.
just pork spending. It's just what it is. It's stuff that doesn't need to be there. I would really like some more creativity.
So in the increase from the trip coordinator director of transportation is closer to $10,000. I don't know where $22,000 came from. The other thing is, it's $10,000. The other thing we did talk, and Nicole, because we really heard a lot about the bus aides, is we did talk about if these two extra drivers didn't have an assignment, we would have them being on the buses, helping support. So kind of thinking, all right, well, if we have a driver that we don't have something specific for, they could ride the bus and help support drivers that may need support. So we did talk that out. We're like, okay, how could we think outside the box of these two drivers? We want to make sure we're using them to where the need is. So I just wanted you to know, we did have a discussion on
Sorry,
that.
I was looking
Thank
at
you.
the line 2 item where the $22,064 difference, budget difference.
The budget difference.
Yep, you went from 42,000 to 64,000.
Yep, so I think what you're looking at there is, in this year's current budget, remember that position is split 50-50 between maintenance, director of maintenance, and director of transportation, right?
Oh, okay, yep.
Okay, and then so, like, the savings that Katie is referring to, if we didn't have to hire a food service manager, is coming from the fact that that split now becomes mostly, the director of operations becomes mostly director of maintenance, and then you'll see some salary that is embedded in the school nutrition or the 2930 reports that you see. So that's where that position is funded from, and then this position becomes the full-time position. So on that specific line, you see it tick up 22,064.
I kind of was more of a clarifying. I have my guess as to why, but so cost center 8 for transportation, it's going up 27.7%, and that's only 12% is the director of transportation. The major driver for that is the
Special
salary
education.
increases for the bus drivers, right?
And the special education transportation.
And the special ed transportation, because we're not covering that with a grant.
Correct.
Okay.
It's
I
almost
just-
260,000, 230,000 for the special ed transportation.
But we're paying our drivers to drive, and our drivers got a big pay increase this year as well, right?
Correct.
So that, just a clarifying notion if anybody wonders, right?
Right.
And I'm kind of wondering, I just want to,
Right, the major driver is the special ed transportation.
special ed transportation is the big one, okay.
So I know there's not much we can do about the special ed driver, which is fine. I don't think that's a part of anybody's concern, although I'm not putting words in other people's mouths, but, special education is special education. We still don't have full buses running now. Right, we still have outages, we still have, 5-day outages for 1 or 2 buses overlapping. So having 10 runs which I don't know if that includes putting back one of the ones
Yes.
we took out.
Yeah. Includes putting red back in.
Okay, so it puts us back at the beginning, right, with all
Correct.
10. Having 10 runs and only 2 substitutes. I know adding 2 bus drivers is an additional cost, right? But I think transportation goes in line with cost center 1 instruction. I feel like the community was extremely vocal, and I feel like that putting the money where it needs to be, and as long as we do aggressively cut, I like that word, I'm going to steal it from you, Scott. Cut where we can, creatively and fiscally, frugally. We really need to stop saying that we're struggling with this or that and really say, what can we do differently? And then if you still have an increase that you think they may not like, I still think they'll support it when it's instruction and transportation. I continue to hear that my child is not receiving an education because they're not making it to school. And whether it's 1 or 100, doesn't matter. Our policy and our goal is each student. So that's where I think we need to do. I don't know that I support a year-round director of transportation position. I don't understand why the payroll and certain things are in that line item or in that responsibility. I mean, I can understand as the direct manager.
Right, they check the time sheets and so forth. Yeah.
Okay, so then I think that goes along the lines with what Scott was saying, whether it's that person or not, what would be necessary for that person, this role, to take on these additional responsibilities? And is that necessary year-round? I mean, doing website maintenance, routes in a software, payroll, timesheet signing, that doesn't equate to me, just hearing about it at face value, that doesn't equate to me as a year-round director role. Maybe a manager. I don't know. I don't know what that is.
So
But
you
I
would support extra summer days, though, to get prep for the...
Sure, yeah, I mean, what's the budget, what would the budget look like if this person's position, or not this person, but if the position was changed to an hourly, or hourly throughout the summer, but at the same, where it lives now?
Like a per diem type thing.
Or just change it to year-round, but in the same role hourly, not a promotion to director or a higher level, and is that something that, can we?
We can calculate that, and then we need to add a nutrition director.
Well, I don't know why you wouldn't add nutrition director, because you're still taking away the transportation responsibilities from the director of operations. I just don't think a director of transportation is supported by maintenance of oversight of buses, routes over the summer, payroll, and website maintenance.
May I try to restate, I think, what you're asking, Nicole?
Yeah.
Are you asking us to reevaluate the need and determine if the change to a full-time, year-round director is too robust of a change for the duties that they're taking on? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay, so the piece of, we know we need food service, and we know, like, that, shifting that away from the current director of operations, that's not what you're talking about. What you're talking about is this new position. Taking it to
Correct.
where it is.
Right, so relieving the duties from the director of operations, but not necessarily making it a director of transportation. Making the trip coordinator current role and responsibilities, added responsibilities, but year-round, something like that. Or, I think that there are other creative solutions that we need to consider. So I know Doug has his hand up, so I'll pass it over, but
So I guess
want to
what
make
we-
sure that
I
we
think-
focus on transportation. We need the bus drivers, we need the buses on the road. That's point blank. Buses need to be on the road.
So
Every day.
I do hear you. So what we would have to, because what I don't want you to misconception is doing what you saying save money, because I don't want to say that. Because if that person is solely doing transportation on an hourly pay, and they're going to now do overtime, because they've got to cover things that they don't in their hourly, I've got to calculate that. And then if I'm going to do additional days in the summer to cover summer school, and additional days for getting routes ready, I don't know if that's a savings or not. It's also in a CBA, so I'm going to guess that when we change the duties, we're going to get a phone call that we now need to negotiate that contract, that hourly wage. So I don't want there to be a misconception that take all on this duty and feel they're going to be paid the same hourly wage. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say is, when you go to a director position, you have more flexibility in the job description, the hours, the necessary things that need to be done, okay? So that's why, for me to answer, I don't want you to be disappointed if I come back and it's even more than this, because I have to calculate overtime, I have to calculate summer, there'll be a negotiation with the hourly wage on that employee, so I don't know that.
So is that in the support staff CBA?
Yes, it is. Yep. So I want to be transparent. That
No, I mean that's
There's a
fine.
lot
Yeah, I mean
factor. Salary
we want
gives you
that,
more
but
flexibility.
I think that we need to focus on cutting appropriately
right.
and making sure our bus is on the road, however that happens, and
Right.
we need to resolve this constant. I mean, I got a
Yes.
phone call from the town office yesterday,
Yeah.
and she was sitting there waiting for me to answer because I thought it was Sabatis. I thought it was another robocall.
Right.
You know, it's been a lot over the past couple of weeks. We just congratulated ourselves, 3 weeks ago, and here we are, not any better off. So that's my point. We need to make sure that we're cutting every which way we can and making sure that the roles and responsibilities are aligned appropriately and saving money so that we have the budget that we could support. But if we're supporting an increase for transportation and instruction, I think the community will be okay with that. It's where the money is going, I think, is the concern. Sorry, Doug.
No, I hear you, and we were as frustrated as you. I mean, the problem is, as you know, Nicole, I could hire 3 additional drivers and 5 drivers go down. I'm trying, it's no one's fault, that timing of everything. So yes, we had hoped if we had that additional driver, which we thought we had, which we hope to have in a week, we wouldn't be having the same calls. So I'm with you. We are interviewing people to come on as substitutes. High priority. We thought we were all set, and then something happens. And it just will be weeks with fine, and then something happens. So I hear you. I hear the frustration. So I'm not sure. We also don't want to be hiring people that, I don't. So we thought we would have 2 drivers with 10 runs. That's what we're going for. If you want to add another driver, then we have to add that cost in. Because it's not going to be $12,000.
Talk about transportation, it kind of got me thinking. I kind of got the impression too, having before and after school kind of care kind of helped with the transportation issue a little bit. Is that, I don't know much about that. Is that like a robust thing? Is that something that only happens when the drivers aren't available? Because I kind of get the impression if the time span of drop off was a little bit wider and pickup was a little bit wider, that would help more parents that maybe don't rely on the buses to help with that. You know what I mean? Because I'm noticing not everybody can drop off just in that 15-minute window that happens in the morning. I see it when I'm in line. There's parents there early trying to drop, and
So
is that something we can
I mean,
investigate?
supervision, we did extend in the morning and the afternoon when we have supervision. I think some parents wish it was earlier when the buses are running and they're dropping off. Where was I going? I do want to make you aware, though, we have grant funds that are paying for that.
Okay.
We have not budgeted for supervision next year.
Okay.
So after September 30th, if we won't be providing supervision, we don't have the funds.
And I guess I feel like that's something I got I get the impression from talking to people and from seeing people, that might be something that would help along with the bus thing. Is that something in a future discussion we should put on an agenda? I mean,
What are you
like
asking?
pre and post supervision hours, or a larger window of drop-off time?
For when buses are down or when they're not down?
I would say for either. There's a lot of working parents, I think, that, I mean, I'm just throwing this out as a discussion point, is that
Right.
it's a lot of working parents that are going along with the buses, I guess. A lot of them rely on busing for transportation to get their son or daughter to school. I think that it's also this really small window. I'll fully admit, going over to the middle school really early in the morning, there's a lot of times that I'm cutting it really close to being late, and I'm not the only one. You know, like, there's a lot of people that are.
So that's not a bus issue,
You know.
that's a people dropping off in the morning?
Yeah.
And that would have, that's impact on job responsibilities.
So we would have to pay more.
You would
that
have
kind of
to
thing,
invest
to-
in, yes.
something. Okay. Yeah.
My thought came back to me. So I have two. One, it would be helpful to see like a position description for like trip coordinator and then director of transportation or coordinator of transportation.
we
Like
have that.
that would be great,
Yep.
just because I'm a visual learner. Second, just a question around special ed transportation. Is that billable through main care, or no? We can't get reimbursement for transportation?
Go ahead, explain.
Yeah, so this is a recent development that Maine Care is able to pay for a portion of qualifying. There's a lot of logistics that go into it. But I attended a training in the last couple of months, I feel like, where that was discussed, and it was sort of like a revelation to everyone that it could be leveraged in that way. So we've been working really diligently, a special administrative assistant in the central office, myself and Nancy, to determine what, if any, of our student population qualifies for that. We haven't seen the fruits of that labor yet, because the working relationship with it's billing through Maine Care. It does take some time to get it set up. We're hoping to see, a yield from that we can offset, but I wouldn't dare put an offset in the budget, not having any idea of what that relationship would be like, when it's going to change from the DOE, because the conversation also was that, similar to other billable Maine Care services, we pay the seed portion, we pay the state portion. At some point, the thought is that will happen for transportation as well. So it would be really unfortunate for us to be like, yay, we have this transportation availability that we can bill through Maine Care, and then almost instantaneously it would turn around and be like, well, you have to pay the seed on that, which would still be a lesser amount.
Yeah.
It's just there's so many question marks at this point that we're investigating it, we're looking into it, and hopefully we'll have a report on that before the close of the school year to see if we've been able to leverage that billing.
So there's potential, we just don't know what it could be.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and currently, there's no seed assessed for it, so if we have that established, that billing established, then we wouldn't pay the state share for the remainder of the school year if we can get it facilitated. But I know even yesterday and today, I believe Tammy reached out to follow up and say, where are we with the setup of the process?
Thanks.
Did you have a little bit of a more clear understanding of where to go here when you go back?
Well,
Like,
What's the number?
what's the number? I don't, right, exactly. I mean, I'm not,
no, I'm talking about
about this particular
this particular
item.
item, not percent.
I'm hearing what I plan on doing is calculating the trip coordinator, doing the hours and the days to show the difference.
Thank you. Just making sure that Diane?
That's what I have written down.
Is it possible that the head bus driver could take on some of those responsibilities?
No.
No. What are the responsibilities of the head bus driver? Do we have
The head bus driver would get an increase in hourly wage. It's more to be a support on the road, first thing in the morning, or different things that come up. It's a what's the word?
Continuity?
Thank you. Between the drivers and the trip coordinator or the director of transportation, whichever position.
That, I just want to make sure that was clear.
It's almost like having department heads, team leaders. It's a person that speaks with for the drivers, and it's that connection, that communication.
Okay. So now we're going to talk percentage. Because now those drivers have been discussed and the admin has a better, clear idea where you guys would like her to go. So I'm hearing we're nowhere close to the 9. That's not what we want. So in order for them to have some direction, you have to speak and give them a number. 8, 7, 6, 5. I can't make this number for you, and neither can they. So I'm going to ask you each to kind of give them a number. I'm going to start on this side of the table with Scott.
I mean, I look at last year being almost 2%, and you're talking out of the 9 to 11% over 2 years. That's, I mean, it's unrealistic, but I would like to see a 4%.
I don't think the 9% would get through, especially if we had 2 staff members. That's going to take it up to over 10, just about or close to, if we had 2 more teachers and don't have an offset. But even with the offset, I always believed and always said that our job here is to propose a budget that we feel is what's needed to provide the quality education. And then it's up to the people at the budget meeting to determine whether they can afford it or not, and in what areas they want to shift the money around. So while I think 9.5 or 9.15 is not going to pass, you know, I wouldn't like to, you know, I don't know that a number over 5%, but I kind of leave it up. We've hashed it over. We looked at it. We haven't gone through all the cost centers because we can't get off of one. So it's like, here's the budget. Here's what's in it. Can we present it and support it, and then turn it over to those people that attend the budget meeting, so that we let, instead of a group of 9, we let a group of 60 or 70 determine what the budget will be to go to the referendum and the numbers. I don't know, but I would, you know, I'm going to support what the board puts forward. That's the way I think it should be. So I'll leave it up to the others, because personally, if what we need is 9% to provide the education, then we ask for 9, and if the people don't want to give it to us, then they tell us a different amount.
So I'm not good with percentages. That's why I read law for a living. But I would think that something about 5 could be tolerable. But I would say, as a wish or some sort of miracle, I would like to see a budget that only has absolute needs. And I know that was put forth this year, saying that it was needs. I still think that there's a lot of so I also, I don't know that 5% is a magic number. I think overall, and I think maybe Christy asked for the breakdown more so, right? And overall, 5% budget means for your value of home of this amount, your increase is going to be this. I think that's easier to look at than an overall amount. And the average, what's the average value, right? So we can say 5%, but if that still means your $200,000 home is going up $260 in Sabattis before town budget, and now a dam, I guess. I'm starting to hear about that. I think this is the number that we need to focus on, but not sacrificing teachers, transportation, absolute 100% needs for our students. I know that Share Center, just bringing it up as an example because it was talked about tonight, which I didn't know about it. I think it's a great thing, the $600 a year. a year, I think.
For
You
the
said
small-
600, but I don't
Yeah,
think you
for
said
the
that.
small
Okay.
school, and that's, no,
600?
Not all schools have it.
Not all schools have it, but still $600 a year, which I don't know that that's worth it. I mean, are we getting $600 worth of supplies? I think those types of things have to be considered in order to determine that it is providing quality, value to our education and to our students. So with all that said, I would like to see no more than 5, if that's possible. But I don't want to limit. I would like to see the lowest budget possible that affords our students the best programs, the best teachers, transportation to and from so that they can get an education. Right? So it's kind of hard to quantify that in a percentage, while also still being mindful of this increase to the tax bills. So, sorry, that's probably not what you wanted.
Exactly what I was asking for. Thank you. Brandon?
So just for context, Brandon, before you start. So 5%, I just want big picture. I got to be the bearer of the big picture. So with the 5%, we're looking at $1 million decrease. So I'm just pointing that out.
Thank you.
Brandon?
That's helpful.
Yeah.
My number was initially 5, but I am settling on 7 because of what we are asked to add back in. And I think, in hindsight, with the amount of money that was gutted out of the expectation that nothing is going to go wrong, I think is unrealistic. And just based on the conversations we had last year with all of the things that could have, should have been replaced or fixed 10 or 12 years ago that we still didn't touch, I think that's going to be a bigger issue coming up than we may think. So 7 would be my answer.
So, I'm kind of in the same with everybody, is that I think 5 would be amazing, but I don't think it's possible in reality. I was going over last year's budget. They voted out $287,617 out of the number 9, facilities and maintenance. So that was almost $300,000 that was pulled out. But then the public voted $100,000 in for number 1, for teaching. So I think that it's going to end up. I mean, I'm more of a realist. I think that it's going to have to be 9, especially to get the teachers. And I think that kind of, as Nicole has mentioned a couple times today, is I think that people will pay if the money's going to things that they feel strongly about. And I think they feel strongly about educators in the classroom. Is what I'm getting, what is being presented to me from the way that the public is acting. So that's why I tried to push for that. Another thing that I think is important to note is that regular education is like almost 32% of the budget. So, I mean, that's kind of why we spend so much time on it, right, with that. So just to throw out the numbers with that. So yeah, I guess my long-winded way, I'm at 9. I think that 9 would at least keep in the money for facilities. Being on the facilities committee, I'm very well aware that these schools, especially Sabattis Primary and Libby Tozier, one or the other or both are going to need some help on top of teachers in the classroom and everything else. So,
Christy.
I'm ready. So current inflation rate is 3.2% if you look at for this month. Looking at what our budget was, it was about a 1.7% increase last year. Knowing that we have to pay 12% increase in health insurance plus our contracted benefits, I landed about a 7% increase that I would be comfortable with. That being said, I think we're gonna have to make some really tough decisions, and the beauty of our process is that at our next meeting, which is next Wednesday, we're having a workshop where people can come in and speak with us about pieces. So I hope people do that. Also, our public budget meeting allows for people to put things back in. So we have to be comfortable with our recommendation. Our administrative team, Katie, they're saying 9.14 right now. I think we are asking to put more, we're asking you to like conduct magic. Like, oh, put in 2 positions and cut. Like, okay, the cuts that we're going to have to make are going to be deep then if we really believe that transportation and cost center 1 is where we want increases. Like, it's going to have to come from somewhere else. So I'm hoping that the public is listening and watching, and we need to do our due diligence to let them know that next Wednesday is an opportunity to kind of help us better understand where people want to land. But I'm comfortable with 6.5 to 7.
Diane?
So in that, is that working?
That'd be closer.
It's going to go down. So in that 9.14%, that does not include the extra health insurance that we have to pay, correct?
It does include it.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, we were at 8% before.
Oh,
8
okay,
point some-
you-
Yes.
All right.
8.85?
8.85.
All right. And maintenance last year took a big cut. I would agree with Christy and Brandon. I think I can agree to a 7%. Our facilities desperately need repairs that are being put off every year, and it's going to get bigger and bigger if we do that again this year. But I would agree to that. And next week with the workshop, I hope a lot of our community members attend and give us some feedback. Because when we get there, it's not the time to bring all that stuff up. We need to do it ahead of time to be prepared. So I would agree to a 7%.
So I have a 4, David, 5, 7, and 9, 7, 7. And I'm a 7%. That would be majority. Does that help? Does that help?
Yeah, we can, as pointed out, and last year, we didn't go right to the moment.
Right.
So we will look everything over and you can see it. And I'll make sure to put out a communication on Facebook and so forth that you're looking at, a 7%, well, 5 to 7%. And that next week we're going to talk about reductions. I can see what I can draft in the next week. We do have an administrative meeting tomorrow for next week, so people could hear that before they comment. And so we'll put something out.
Yeah, so you're doing 1 for 7%, that's it?
Well, I heard, I'm going to start with.
We had
it's like-
9, so that's what it is.
It's like 9, 7, 5, it's, I mean, there's going to get to a point, to get to $1 million, right? To get to $1 million, you can imagine, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay, so.
I've been down this road.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to get to what we see as that 1, 2, 3.
Well, the
And then-
9 is basically where we're at.
Right,
that's-
we're at 9, and then it's the
That's without
218,
adding
and then
the
it's
teachers in.
218 reduction for the 2 teachers. Then it's let's go beyond that to get to 7.
I just
then
wondered how many-
Beyond 7.
What you were going to bring back the next time, because next week wouldn't be the appropriate time. You're
Well,
going to get input, but that's a public meeting for the public to come in and give their thoughts on the budget. For us to look at those and make decisions on what we're going to agree is going to be cut wouldn't be next week. That would have to be the week after.
well, it's always, for me, what's going to motivate the public to come out, right? So are they going to be motivated to come out just to say, you better come down from 9%, there's no way in heck we're going 9%, but we want the teachers in as well? I don't know. So you guys would know better than that. I cannot do that, you're right. I can bring it on the 10th, because we have a meeting on the 10th, so you're right. Next week could just be open forum, and who comes and shares, great.
Right, okay. I just want to make sure, because I can't be here next week.
Yeah,
No, next-
First Wednesdays of the month.
Yeah.
Except for July and August.
right,
Next week is just public, there's
right.
no.
So I can just put out that, it would be all right to put out to the public that you're looking at a reduction?
Well, I think that's fine.
Yeah,
I don't think you're going to have, I doubt you'll have time to come up with, detail all the cuts that you're going to need to
Correct.
make to get to those.
Right.
But I think you're going to get input from the community, whether you're going to say we're looking for
Exactly.
deductions or not. They're going to
Yes.
tell you what they believe,
correct,
because, you know,
right.
you can't detail where all the deductions or reductions are going to come from. So somebody that wants it from one is still going to speak, because they don't know if that's where we're considering it.
Correct.
So,
Okay.
all right.
All right.
Diane?
I was just going to say, since next week is potentially could be a bigger meeting, is there any way of having it at a different place to accommodate parents?
Well, I think we've advertised here,
Okay.
so it would be great if it was packed and people come in. What's hard is,
Yeah.
until you know what's impacting you, it's hard to come in. That's all. I think people would have an opinion about taxes, for sure, right? And so what we'll do is make sure that everything is updated. So part of the messaging can be, please refer to the PowerPoints, they've been updated. There's questions and so forth like that, or comments, that there's a public meeting next week for you to give feedback. We can put something like that. Thank you.
Let's move down to 7, new business. 7.1, to approve the 2024-2025 school calendar.
So moved.
Second. I second. Diane.
Oh, I thought I heard your voice move and then Diane. No, I'm just making sure. All right, any discussion?
I have one question. Down at the bottom, it says student days 175, in-service 4, total days 181. That's not my math. So so the comp days are not included in the service days or the student days, but they're including the 181. So maybe there should be some modification there, so when other people look at it, they don't see that the math is off. Because it appears that you're adding two numbers to come up to 181.
Okay, we can make that adjustment.
Anyone else?
What's the hang up with remote days still? Why is it try to have? I mean, I guess I don't understand.
Well, sometimes we have to be prepared, right? So,
So why can't we prepare ahead of time? What's the holdup?
so we have to send the meals home, right? So if we know ahead of time, the day before, we're confident there'll be a snow day, we send the meals home. Now, this year, we did send them home sometimes, and we didn't have the snow day, right? So we do our best to let people know. You know how I put out robocalls, be prepared, so forth. So it's just to say that it's going to be remote, and then what happens if we can't do the remote? I mean, there's this factor.
Is there a way to circumvent that? Like a frozen meal gets sent home at the beginning of the year? I mean, there's got to be ways to skirt this.
Yeah, we talked about that, of whether that's a possibility. We did consider that. So we can, right. So we've tried, we can keep talking about how to best do that. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, if it was an ice storm and half the staff doesn't have staff, it doesn't have electricity, power, we probably wouldn't do a remote day, we'd end up doing a snow day. Like what happened in southern Maine right now, they don't have power. So that's why to say you will and then you won't, we're going to do our best that we will have it if we can. And that's why I tried to warn parents ahead of time. Be prepared, this could be this type of call tomorrow. heads up, or this is what we're looking at.
Nicole?
I just have a few comments and probably gonna make a bunch of enemies here. First off, I don't know why we still have a February break.
Oh.
I don't know how often this has been brought up year after year. I know that when I was in school, and it was quite a while ago, I didn't have a February break, and I still went to school through the end of June. So, I still think that, to me, we don't need a February break. I'm actually also against early release days. I'm also against remote days. I'm not sitting with my pre-K daughter to do an hour and a half of find the picture. Sorry, I'm not doing it. But I'm also not doing it with my third grader next year. I have a job. I'm on the phone. I manage a team. Just as we hear from you, your admin, you express that certain folks can't do 2 jobs or more than the jobs that they're doing. I can't either.
Right.
And I see that a lot about remote days. I know Scott likes it, but I don't. I think remote days are pointless. My son thought it was cool, though. I'm not going to lie. He loved being on Zoom. The younger ones, they might like it. I'm still not doing it. So I don't like remote days. I don't like early release days. I don't like late start days either. So don't get me wrong. And I would, if anything, I would really like to see February vacation gone. But in addition to that, I am seeing a lot of news about starting after Labor Day. So, in my rambling of things, making enemies and probably making everybody's head spin, my real only question is for this particular school calendar year, because I know remote early days and late start dates are a budget impact. Have we considered just starting after Labor Day at least? And what will that do? What will that look like? Is that
So we're,
Point.
and
Is
you
it
know, you
useful?
wouldn't know this, Nicole, probably, is we're part of the Lewiston Regional Technical Center. So our calendars have to be pretty much aligned. We can only have 5 days that are not alike. And so if we started later in Labor Day, I'm not sure there's enough days for RSU4 to be off the calendar. So, because we have to be aligned and only can have 5 days difference.
Is that 5 days between all the
All of
schools
us,
together?
right.
total?
So like we, right now, don't have a workshop day when other people have a workshop day, so that counts as one difference. So, and then another person will say this, so the region is going before Labor Day. It would have to probably be a regional calendar discussion, which I can bring up next year, but that's where it happens. We meet as a region and talk out the calendar and work on it. So this, like the February vacation is the same thing. We align with the region because we're part of the Lewiston, and we have to by the DOE. There's regulations on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will say, starting before Labor Day, there is a benefit, and it's the slow transition into school. So it's 3 days the first week, 4 days the second week, 5 days, and then you're full back. And for a lot of kids, that helps kind of transition from summer.
What are thoughts about maybe having, if it's a short week, not having an early release Wednesday? Or would that mess thing up?
Last year we comped that, it was almost $16,000.
Just on the weeks that we had?
Yes,
Okay,
And that was before the benefit increase.
yes.
all right.
If you're paying extra, down extra.
There is.
I don't know, that was last year's number, I don't know. Okay, so
So what did we do before that?
We paid it.
Paid for it.
It was a reduction a couple years ago when we switched.
all right, so the changes that I'm seeing is changing the color of the days.
Yeah, we're going to get on the colors.
Just those two.
Just those two
And
items.
the number at the bottom.
And the
make
number at
sure
the
that
bottom.
It adds up.
So with those two changes, all those in favor of this school calendar? Thank you. 7.2, to approve the 2024-2025 Board of Directors meeting schedule.
move.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I do want to note, Bob, we corrected our,
Corrected
I
it.
checked that. I
okay,
checked
I
that.
knew you would. I knew you would.
That was going to be my question.
I looked at it and made
No,
sure
no.
the first one every month was number 8 or later.
Yes. Michelle and I went over that. I said, please don't put it on the first. I'm going to hear about it.
Now, I may not still be on the board, but I appreciate the effort.
You're welcome.
Any discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
She's just
I'm
checking
just
it.
making sure they're
Against the
matching.
calendar.
We will double check.
Okay.
I usually do. All right, 7.3, to approve April 8th, 2024 as a half a day of school due to the anticipated eclipse event.
So what I'm hearing.
Hang on,
Oh,
I
sorry,
got-
excuse,
I
oh, yes,
did
you got to do the
no-
motion, then discussion, sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Now,
Thank you. Okay, so this has been a hot topic with superintendents over the last probably month. We went from, oh, we're all set, right? Then texts started coming and emails started coming and concerns have been raised. So the high school, this was, Ed Zuis put this together because the high school planned for this last year and bought the glasses. Okay, so the high school students have glasses. The rest of district, we have not purchased glasses for. Doesn't mean we can't, but it's around $1,400. Oh, and Christy donated for the middle school. Thank you, Christy.
4-H donated.
Oh, excuse me, 4-H donated them for the middle school. So what's happened, though, is there's an increase emails coming to us from the Department of Education, from the Maine State Police, the very concern about traffic, safety. I mean, I got an email, get your plans ready for accidents, get your plans ready for this and that. So the Western Maine superintendents, I would say majority right now, are leaning to, are going to dismiss. Lewiston, I think, made the decision on Monday night. Auburn has it on their agenda. We have it on our agenda. Lisbon is contemplating whether they're going to do an exchange for another day. So there's a lot of discussion on this. So the real thing is, one, we don't want our kids looking at it on the way home on the bus and have bus drivers being nervous. Do they have their glasses on? Do they not have their glasses on? Especially the elementary, right? So, and there's an anticipation, not that it would happen RSU4, anticipation of high attendance, outage, people taking the day to, be part of an event that happens in one generation, right? So there is also concern around that. So I'm asking whether you want to consider an early dismissal on that day, that we would do similar noon for the secondary and 1 o'clock for the elementary to get them where they need to be by the time this transition. So it just seems like folks are very nervous about it, and I don't want us to, not take it seriously and have at least a discussion on what you want to do for April 8th.
so I have a quick question. Sure. With the possibility of the staff being the ones that call out or anything, has there been any discussion with staff? Are they still going to call out if we do a half a day?
Well,
Has
I
there
I
been any
can't
kind
answer
of,
that.
Talk or anybody hear any of that stuff? Is that,
I don't know that. I think there would be an appreciation recognizing that for safety concerns and for their concerns as well, that the early release would be helpful. But I mean, I don't know that answer.
Bob?
Yeah, as with any early release, the impact it's going to have on the families, the working parents, to try and come up with some kind of child care service. Can be hard. I can understand having a busload of fourth graders going down the road and it starts to turn dark. I mean, we're not going to be in total eclipse, which makes it even more likely they're going to start to look up.
Right.
To see half a sun, which burns just as much as the full sun. So there are, I can understand the safety concerns. This is a couple weeks away yet, so there is time to get the word out. I think, is it mid-April, April 13th or something?
Yeah,
Week
we
and a
would
half.
put it,
April 8th.
it's a week and a
April 8th.
half.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of time.
We would immediately put out something tomorrow, letting families know.
But
And,
yeah,
yeah,
those are my concerns, is the impact to students, to make sure that they're going to have proper supervision. I have a sense that a lot of people are going to be out because to see the total eclipse, they got to be quite a ways away from here. So they're going to be leaving at 11 or no later than 12 to get up farther west so they can see the total one. Because that's the key. Partial eclipse happen often compared to total. So, I mean, I already had my total back in the 60s, so I don't need to, you know.
the total eclipse of the heart.
Can we start playing?
Any other discussion?
No.
No.
That is not Pink Floyd. That's Dark
Isn't it heart?
It's Taylor Hart, Nicole Hart, one of the.
Okay, all right. Can we come back?
So
No offense. We,
I think motion is for a half day, but I think Katie, then you asked if there was something else we would consider or whatever. And superintendents around the state and state police and what have you. I would recommend or like to see that we just swap the day or call it off. I think a half a day early release is a little bit more challenging. Even if we had brought this up earlier, if we still don't have full bus runs, then a parent has to try to figure out how they're going to get out of work early and back. I don't want the whole day off either, but I also don't want our bus drivers on the road with our children who are going to do what they want, still look at the sun, even if they're high schoolers, right? I know we said elementary, but the high schoolers are still going to do what they want to. So I don't support a motion for a half day. I would support a motion for taking the whole day off and
Make
maybe it
up
gets
in
forgiven.
June. Yeah.
Like, make it up in June, or maybe the governor will, make it forgiven. If the entire state is worried, we could, I don't know if we could ask or not, but if not, I would prefer that we just make it up.
Christie?
Yeah, I would agree with Nicole. I think it's easier to coordinate full-day childcare than it is to try to pick up at noontime or 1 o'clock. I think Wednesdays we've got it figured out because it's planned, but where we only have a week, that would be my recommendation too. So did I make the motion for this or didn't?
Yes.
I would rescind my motion and make an amendment.
Yeah, so the last day of school would be June 13th,
What day of the week is that?
Thursday.
a Thursday.
Did we have days approved for the
Yes.
flooding event?
In December.
From the
Uh,
state of
n-
Back in
emergency?
December.
No,
Not the flooding.
they didn't give
Nobody
it
even
for that.
applied for that?
They gave it for the Lewiston tragedy.
Shooting, yeah.
We did get those days back.
But nothing for the time for
For
the,
December.
even though it was a
She
state of
called it
emergency.
a
and Amber's
civic
Garden
state of
County.
emergency, not a state of emergency.
Yeah, we were
So there
not,
wasn't a provision
right.
to apply for those days.
yeah.
What about a disaster declaration? We can't apply?
No, she,
The Fed did.
we were told we couldn't apply for that.
No.
No.
It's all about the Benjamins.
But with this, you still have wiggle room because we're staying within that last week, right? Yeah. So we had, we always plan for like 5 and we've had 3 because we did the remote days and we did the forgiving, days we could get forgiven. I don't think this will be forgiven because it's varying. Some districts are doing half, some so probably not.
So I would strongly recommend you check with LRTC community, because if this puts the total schools all around as 6 days, it will not be allowed by DOE because, right.
Well,
We
the
have to
count-
be in conformity.
Yeah.
A half day allows us to count it for a full day as long as we feed.
Yeah.
But a whole day off is a whole day different from LRTC schedule, which is set amongst all the schools.
Yeah, I think because, I'm not sure, but our LRTC students still could attend. I mean, Lewiston is dismissing early, So our students still would attend LRTC. We would be closed. So our students would attend. But I can verify that, but I think because of the decision from this board, he would have to put in that RSU4 made that decision. There's things he can do for appealing.
How would LRTC students get to?
A lot of them transport themselves, yeah. But we would tell them ahead of time that Lewiston is having school. Because there's one day next year that Auburn will be closed and we will be open, and students are going to go to Lewiston for their programming. So there's different, yes.
And if we have a set number of LRTC students, right, so it's not like just a bus going down, is there an opportunity to provide a van service for that particular day for anybody who doesn't drive themselves?
Well, what we do now, when there's a snow day or so forth, they know ahead of time. You know, when we make the announcement that we're closed and Lewiston's open, they make arrangements. The kids, and they understand we're closed, so they work with the students that may miss the day. They're understanding of it. So I hate to say we would do it here. Are we doing it every time? That's a commitment. So I think we could just play.
But it sounds like it's minimal impact to the LRTC students
Right.
if they would still end up going for the half a day.
Exactly, and we'll let Rob Callahan, the director, know that we're closed, so that the teachers of those programs work with those students that miss. They're very good about doing it.
Thank you.
So now I need a new motion. Because you pulled your motion off
Yes.
before.
So do you want me to state it? I need to look at, the motion is to close all RSU4 schools on Monday, April 8th, for the solar eclipse.
Second.
Nobody else? All those in favor? All those not in favor?
They don't think it's going to pass, but they're doing the calculating now.
And Doug? Got to come up with a different plan. So we go back to the original motion of approving April 8th as a half day of school due to the anticipated eclipse event. All those not in favor?
Oh, you gotta have a motion.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to jump in. Okay. Brandon,
moved it, I'll second it.
okay. All those in favor? We just had your discussion.
Oh, I missed the discussion. Well, for the second motion, right? Was it motion, second, and then discussion, and then vote
Oh, yes.
for each one? I'm
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I guess I didn't feel like it was necessary, but I kind of feel like it's important to have the full day. I feel like a half day is going to kind of be a little chaotic, and I kind of agree with the burden on the parents is going to be a little harder with a half day dealing with all that. And then, I don't know if I'm changing any minds with this. I mean, I think it's also a good thing to, I don't know, stop and acknowledge that there's a universe operating outside of human beings once in a while. I mean, it's literally going to turn the sky black. and we hesitate to take a full day off for this, you know?
Happens every day.
Yeah, it does, you're right. But this particular event probably won't happen again in my lifetime. So, I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, we don't.
It's only another 20 years.
This one says 2079 in Maine, in Maine.
Maybe I'll still.
Yeah, so, I mean.
It's all the timing of the dismissal. That's the
yeah,
problem.
Yep.
I guess it's just, a full day seems, I think it would be good for the kids and for everybody. And I know I'm not, for the working parents, it's hard, but I think a half day. So, that's my case, I guess.
Any other discussion?
Just gonna.
What time does the last bus get to, like, what time does the last student drop off?
About 4:25.
I'm just gonna say 2 half days in 1 week for parents to have to pick up. 4:25.
Yeah, full day.
Full day, 4:25.
Any other discussion or questions? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the half day?
I'm gonna go in favor, so I don't want to say. Sorry, well, people are not gonna, people are not gonna approve. People are not gonna approve the full day.
Well, I don't want a full day, so that's a good point.
I'm not influencing you, this is my reason.
You're not unreasonable.
Guys are killing me.
Got my signal.
All those not in favor, hang on. Yeah, so. Okay, thank you.
And we'll, in our call to parents, we'll say if you can't have them attend the half day, that it will be an excused absence. I mean, similar to what we do. So parents they can't do it, we understand. I mean,
It's kind of like a snow day.
right, it's like if we did
Yeah.
early dismissal or a late arrival. I mean, it is kind of like that. I mean, I will open a can of worms. Maybe I shouldn't. But let's say Sunday, we know it's going to be pouring rain all day. I mean, you know,
I just can't support a whole
Right.
day off for that.
so, right.
It never rains.
So, we're just going with it and we're sending it out.
It'll still get dark.
Which is why we could have had a full day.
Yeah.
Just keep your kid home if you think they're gonna.
Yeah.
All right, so
Well, I think it's the pressure, Scott, of the bus drivers.
I know. I would put.
If there's a bus accident during this, I just,
Because somebody's looking at the sun and they hit our
and they
bus.
hit the sun, and
Yeah.
then I get calls from that my child had to go to the eye doctors. I mean,
all right, so we're going to move on to number 8, committee reports, finance facilities committee consolidation subcommittee. I think I said that all.
Yeah, I didn't take notes, but I can remember. We, 3 weeks ago or so, we went to Libby Tozier, did our tour. We filled out our matrix for what we thought individually, and then, so we turned those in. Sam calculated that for us, and we now have, like a group, matrix for the Sabatis primary and a group matrix for the Libby Tozier, and we're going to review those as a subcommittee on our own time and talk about that next time. We then got copies of previous reports, I forget what the technical name, facilities studies for each of the schools. One was done in 1999 for Sabatis primary, and then the other one was 2010, if I remember right,
Yep.
for Libby Tozier. And we broke up into different groups, and one group got one and one got the other, and you were just supposed to kind of paraphrase the major benefits and negatives with those outlined in those reports and with those schools, and we discussed those. We did discuss having a public tour, trying to figure out public tour dates so that the public can be more involved with going to visit these schools so that they can firsthand see and run through the list and kind of be that much more aware about what is going on and especially understand any decisions that get made by the subcommittee. And I think I covered all of it.
Thank you. All we will move down to personnel and policy.
Yes. Today we reviewed some job descriptions. So we reviewed the Director of Curriculum Assessment Instruction and ESSER Coordinator. So that will be posted tomorrow. We reviewed the Special Education Director, and that position is also advertised, and also just firmed up the head custodian and custodian job descriptions. We determined kind of our remainder of this board year and the policies that we're going to put forth, and determined kind of where our cutoff is, because we don't want policies hanging on second reading after May, because that's just is not a great idea. So we have a really good plan for that. Talked about for the future, just to establish some sort of procedure for a board process for requesting policy reviews, because that doesn't exist. And right now, any board member can kind of bring it up, but we don't really have a policy around that. So that's something we're looking into. And then our committees are doing interviews for all open positions. So we've been really busy.
Thank you. Number 9, we will move down to board comments. Anyone have anything? Nicole?
The only comment I have is for our public meeting next week, right? April 3rd.
Yep.
Excuse me. If we can do more to get the word out, so not just an all-call or an email to folks who have a student, contact the town offices, get something on their signs, or do something else so that we can get the residents and citizens who do not have a student actively in our district. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so without any objection, I will declare the meeting adjourned at 8:30.